Politicians. Everybody loves to hate politicians, right? They just never can seem to do anything the way we want them to do it. Well, I want to talk to you today about a couple of politicians that were enemies at one time. Their names were Pilate and Herod. That's right, the ones in the Bible when Jesus was crucified. You know, Pilate, he was a governor for Rome. Nobody liked him, but he was the only one that had the authority to put people to death. And so the Jews brought Jesus to Pilate. They want him killed. And so Pilate's talking to him, and he asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus, "You said it." Like, yeah, it's as you say. That's the only thing Jesus said to Pilate. At least that's the only thing recorded in the book of Luke. And just that. And Pilate turns to the Jews and he says, "I don't find anything wrong with this guy." I mean, the guy, Jesus has just confessed to being the king of the Jews. The king. And Pilate's like, "Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with him." But they're insistent. The Jews are. This guy's causing riots wherever he goes, all over Judea and Galilee and in Jerusalem. And Pilate's like, "Oh, he's a Galilean, is he? Well, now Herod's over Galilee, so we'll just send Jesus to Herod." Well, Herod is all excited to see Jesus because he's been hearing about Jesus and he's been wanting an opportunity to see what Jesus has to say. So Jesus is brought to Herod, and Herod's like, he's asking him all kinds of questions because he's got questions. He wants answers. He wants to see Jesus do a miracle. What does Jesus do? He stands there and doesn't say a thing. You remember that Jesus said, "I only say what my Father tells me to say, and I only do what my Father tells me to do"? Obviously, his father told him to keep his mouth shut in front of Herod. Well, Herod wasn't real happy about that. So Herod and his soldiers, they put a purple robe on Jesus and they start mocking him, and they sent him back to Pilate. And Pilate and Herod, who had been enemies all that time, suddenly they're friends. Why? They have a common enemy, the Jews. Not Jesus, the Jews. So Pilate calls together all the religious leaders, along with all the people, and he announced his verdict. "You brought this man to me, accusing him of leading a revolt. I've examined him thoroughly on this point in your presence, and I find him innocent." Herod came to the same conclusion, sent him back to us. Nothing this man has done calls for the death penalty. So, tell you what, to appease you, I'll have him flogged and then I'll release him. You notice this is the politician here. He doesn't want to do anything to Jesus, but he's got all these constituents out there that want him to do something. So he's willing to do a little something just to make them happy. I'll have him flogged and then I'll let him go. But they're like, no, you can't do that. I mean, they are screaming and hollering, you need to release Barabbas to us. Barabbas, who has led a revolt, who is guilty of murder. And everybody knows it. Release Barabbas, kill Jesus, who is innocent. Pilate didn't want to do that. But the third time Pilate says, "Why? What crime has he committed? I found no reason to sentence him to death. So I have him flogged and then I'll release him." But the mob shouts louder and louder and they're demanding Jesus' death. So as they requested, he releases Barabbas, the man in prison for insurrection and murder, but he turned Jesus over to them to do with as they wished. I wonder today how many politicians compromise like that. That was a compromise on Pilate's part. Pilate wanted to release Jesus because he knew Jesus was innocent. But because his constituents wanted to kill Jesus, he's like, "Well, okay, go ahead." It was a compromise. You know, Pilate had to live with that for the rest of his life. So did Herod. I wonder how many politicians today are doing things that they don't really agree with because their constituents are hollering for them to do this or do that. That's why, as righteous people, as Christians, we need to be contacting our congressmen, and our president and our governor, and we need to be telling them, encouraging them to act in a righteous way, because if they don't have enough people encouraging them to act in a righteous way, then they're going to compromise. And they're going to do whatever the people are hollering the loudest ask them to do. You've heard the term, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So as a righteous person, as a Jesus follower, encourage your political leaders to do the right thing. I'm not going to tell you what the right thing is. You pray, you ask God, you seek God, what is the righteous thing? What is the thing that that politician needs to be doing that would be pleasing to God? That's between you and God and your politician type person. I just wanted to come on here today and talk about politics and politicians not telling you one way or another how to vote, one way or another. What you seek God. You know between you and God what is righteous, what His Word says, how He would have your politician to vote on the issues. I have my own ideas. I listen to conservative news. Yes, I do. But you need to be well informed. And be involved. Maybe God's calling you to be a politician. Yeah, that'd be fun. Anyway, thanks for watching today. I'll talk to you soon.